Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Ahana Packers Edition podcast. Today, we're previewing the Week 6 game between the Packers and the Arizona Cardinals, as the Packers look to get 2 games above 500 for the first time on the 2024 season. And, Joe, we're hoping that we're seeing this team get its sea legs and get back to playing more efficient football, but I know we're both a little out of whack. You worked the 12. You worked a surprise 12. I've got both the kids because Marisol's on a fun trip right now. So we're, this one's gonna be interesting. We might get a little loopy towards the end, and that's not because we're unprepared. It's because we are indeed loopy individuals tonight.
Well, I can already tell I'm out of it because I labeled this as week 8 preview, and I'm pretty sure I called the episode that came out Tuesday week 7.
Par for the course.
So I think we're good. The little one might be the only one that's going to be in control by the end of the episode, so we'll be good on that.
That's the clock. That's the clock we're racing against. Who falls asleep first out of the three of us? We'll see. So the Packers got back to practice. Honestly, one of the better practice reports this far into the season, especially with how lengthy the reports have been. 52 out of the 53 on the active roster did participate today. The only one who didn't was Devontae Wyatt, and I believe they said he was riding the bike on the side. So that's a good sign that he's at least attending in person. Romeo Doubs was back at practice today. Looks like obviously everyone is zaprudering the shot of LaFleur giving him kind of a fist bump at the end of it, and I know some people are saying like, "Oh, look at this and look at that," but I'm like, Romeo has never been the most vivacious individual, honestly. So it's like he gave him the fist bump. It's whatever. But the other great side of it is Christian Watson was definitely participating, and obviously it was shells today. I don't even know if it was shells. I know it was they had their helmets, but it was good to see him run some
I
routes.
think they had at least the shoulders
Yeah,
on, so it was probably
yeah.
shells.
So good to see him run some routes. I don't know how much he really opened up the throttle, but it was just good to see him moving around out there. There, didn't seem to be super favoring or that ankle. So it was just it's just a boost to get him back out there. Good to have Romeo back out there because, like we said, the best this team is going to be is with all their weapons at hand. And Jair was able to practice on Wednesday this week after not being able to go on Wednesday last week. So things are looking up for the Packers on the injury front so far. And honestly, they this Cardinals team isn't special, but Kyler has the physical talent to make them stupid annoying, as the 49ers found out a couple weeks ago. So all hands on deck will be a good thing for this Packers offense and defense.
Sorry, I find it funny. Mike's got his daughter on his lap watching this, and every time Mike goes to speak, she just looks up at him. So, oh, it's comical. But yeah, everything looks good so far. I'm pretty sure Christian said something in his the locker room that uh it wasn't as near as bad as they had worried about, and he's he gives credit to what they figured out in the off season to why he's not as bad as it could be and why he's healed relatively fast. And I think, who knows what the truth is until it all, because they're never, I mean, they're truthful enough with injuries to tell you what the injury is, but they're never truthful enough to tell you that this is how bad the injury got. But he said he fully expects to, do coach speak, player speak, do everything he can to play on Sunday. So that's a good sign. Romeo back in the building is is uh is a good sign. Yeah, I saw that a little bit where they were trying to tear apart the video because LaFleur is just chatting away and having a good time with Watson, and then he just goes over and fist bumps Romeo. And everybody in the world is saying, well, my sources tell me this and my sources tell me that. And I just I don't know. I I still think that I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but his daughter is being very funny right now. So, uh, I still think it has a little bit to do with some kind of mental health thing, where it may not be like he had a mental health breakdown, but it could have been something as simple as, well, not simple, because if it caused him to miss practice in a game, you can't call it simple, but it probably breaks down to a combination of everything that we're hearing. There was some kind of argument. Romeo didn't take it well. It kind of put him in a bad place. So that's where the mental health kind of thing comes into. We've all been there. We've all been there with the jobs where we've all just, said, screw it. I'm going home. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you guys. And then, day or two later, you're back in working and everything else. So everybody's saying, and I'm just going to say it right now. We're probably going to skip our favorite segment today because I didn't have anything prepped. I have a video that I wanted to do because I saw it on TikTok, but I didn't get a chance to put together the audio for it. But basically, the guy was saying that, Romeo was being a diva, and, how can you be a diva when you're still young and you're still on a rookie contract? And it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Then you got Ben Kurt over there that, oh, well, my sources are telling me that they had an argument. It had nothing to do with mental health and blah, blah, blah. And then you had Christian come out and say that, you know, you don't want to speak on it. But I don't remember the full quote, but he's talked a little bit about mental health in it. And it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, I made a joke, a tweet joking about it a little bit, but I do think Christian is coming from a supportive point of view, but it was a little bit like, stop lifting the curtain. It's 6 inches off the ground, Christian. Stop it.
Well, and I, not to get too deep in the woods with things, but that's one of the main problems with all this stuff, right? With mental health issues and all that. It's so stigmatized that you're afraid to say something because then people are going to say, "Oh, well, he's just a basket case. Oh, he's this."
He's just weak.
No,
He's
he
fragile.
just right. So, you know, I would be fully open for him to say, yeah, he had a mental breakdown, or, he wasn't in his right frame of mind, or he was in a dark place, or something like that, because that would help lead it out of being a stigmatized element. But, let's just keep it dark. It's, technically it's violation of HIPAA laws anyway to be talking about it. So, it is what it is. So now that I'm off my soapbox, yes, it's great seeing everybody practice. Uh, I don't want to say we need all hands on deck for the Cardinals, but we do kind of need all hands on deck with the Cardinals, just because this feels like the 2020 game. Was it 2020 or 2021?
2021. Yeah, that Thursday night game.
Because Cardinals are coming in as this tough looking team. The Packers are coming in kind of beat up, missing this player, that player, and everything else. And so, yeah, we do kind of need all hands on deck, but we do, period. Whether it's the Cardinals or the Rams or whoever we're playing this week.
Yep. So ironically, I feel like that game in 2021 was the last time the Cardinals were actually good, because it seems like they've been in a tail. Their season went in a tailspin in 2021 after they lost that Thursday night game, and then Murray blows out his knee the year after, and it's just been they went through the turmoil last season where it's like, do they take one of the quarterbacks? Is Kyler the guy? Blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Is it him? Is it Kingsbury? And it seems like they're, like you said, they're not great, but they're also a team on the rise. They've got some of their up the middle picks. Paris Johnson Jr. looks like he's going to be a keeper. Trey McBride has been a solid tight end for them, and then one of the no-brainer picks, Marvin Harrison Jr., has been every bit the pro that he was expected to be, and he has been the epitome of fuck it, he's down there guy for Kyler Murray. Murray's got about 3 or 4 of those plays this season. I think one of them was the big play against the Niners a couple weeks ago that got them into a position for the game-winning field goal, because it was like 4th and 10, and Murray is running for his life, and he just, you can see it in the play. He's like, "Fuck it, I'm chucking it down there." 18 is out there, so it would be good to have Jair back. The funny thing is that it wouldn't be directly that it would be helpful Jair is back, because Marvin Harrison Jr. is the kind of guy that gives Jair trouble because he's a good route runner that's tall. And that's the kind of guys that Jair has struggled with. Not because, it's purely because he's giving up like 5-6 inches of height to a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. And, Ja can mirror him all he wants, but when there's that much of a height difference, there's only so much Ja can do to, stay in frame and stay in phase. So, but just going over it, if you just go by the overall statistical team ranks, this Cardinals team is about as mid as you can get on offense. They are 12th in points, 14th in total yards. They're scoring the 12th most touchdowns per game. They rank 4th in rushing, which is pretty understandable because of who their quarterback is. But passing offense, they are excuse me, they are 24th in passing. So I get the feeling we're going to see a return to the week 1 and week 2 defenses, where it's a lot of contain the pocket and, make Kyler have to throw it to win kind of thing. Something we talked about, you don't want to let the running back go off as you're trying to contain the quarterback. And this is probably the least dynamic of running backs from those teams. It's not Saquon, it's not Jonathan Taylor, but James Conner has still been a very successful running back in the NFL, and the Packers can't let him go unchecked this week.
Right, and it looks like he's averaging 4.6 per carry. So I mean that's a pretty good
Very
chunk.
healthy total, yeah.
So yeah. 83 attempts, 379 with 3 touchdowns. So yeah, it looks like he's I've always been a fan. I mean, he had a feel good story coming out of
Pitt, yeah.
college with yeah, where he was diagnosed with cancer and he fought all the way back and all that stuff. So I'm you know I like him and all that. Uh, it's gonna hurt without Wyatt. That's all I can say. It's gonna hurt without Wyatt because Wyatt's not there to unless the defense all of a sudden turns it around. It's gonna be hurtful, and it's weird to say that about Devonte Wyatt after the last 2 years of saying, "Well, he really needs to pick it up. He's doing all right with the pass rush, but he's struggling everywhere else." Well, this year he started looking like he was putting it all together, and then he ends up getting injured. Uh, but it's and they've got Trey Benson, and Benson was one of the ones talked about majorly in this last draft about how talented he is and all that stuff. I don't know. There's a common thing that's been talked about with Kyler is that, well, you don't want to get him out of the pocket because he's either going to run it or he's going to throw bombs. Well, I know what I would do then. I would make sure you just contain and leave him in the pocket and tell him to beat you with his arms. And,
Especially because he's a smaller guy, and you want to just kind of keep him in the pocket.
right.
Don't let him see the field good. And for the most part, that's what they did to him in 2021, and why they had success stopping him when they had that was the Rasul Douglas game, because Jair was hurt, and
Yep.
so yeah, they have the game plan, and it's all about discipline and execution this week.
As you can tell, Mike's having troubles with the little one over there. So, uh, this this would be the game that the pass rush really needs to step up. And I know it's probably not because they're going to be in super contain mode with Kyler, but like Mike just said, him being a smaller quarterback, the pass rush really needs to be pushed. And it wouldn't. I'm struggling with my words here. So it wouldn't. The more you can hit him because he's a smaller quarterback, the better. And I know you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks, but if you can get in his face, being that he's smaller and he, let's face it, he'll struggle seeing over his offensive lineman to make a throw. If he can't see the pressure coming, then the better. And this would be the time for Halfley to really change up his looks, maybe a little bit more stunts, maybe a little bit more loading up a single side. Maybe this is the week you try Van Ness and Gary together. So, like I said, I'm kind of stumbling over my words because I'm having a hard time putting it together because you don't want to stay with Contain because we've seen Contain the first 2 weeks and we struggled with it for the most part. It made our pass rush not look good. But then again, you want a strong pass rush because if you can keep hitting him and putting him under pressure, he'll struggle with their game plan.
Yep, I agree. And I wonder if this is the week where you've got a little more comfort with getting like Edge Cooper on the field more often. You've got a week now where Evan Williams started at safety across from McKinney and Bullard was your slot. And Quay has been really good blitzing up the A gap. So, you use the D line as a QB contain, but you send any one of Quay, Cooper, or Bullard on a blitz to try and like basically smoke Kyler into the contain man. And I know that sounds a little weird because you're like, oh, but you don't want him to leave the pocket, so you're containing, but that's the whole point is that you've got the 4D linemen holding their position, but then you use whichever blitzer to push him into help. And that's where we were both saying like it's going to take a lot of discipline this week because you got to be gap sound, got to have pass rush lane integrity, and at the same time, like you said, Joe, you can't become complacent or idle. You have to keep pushing the pedal down to get as much pressure on Kyler as you can. Because, as much as we joked about it, he is prone to putting the ball up because he trusts his arm, trusts his targets. And if you can create opportunities like that, he will put the ball in the air. And, oh, look, your boy McKinney, for once, will actually play the ball well when it's hanging up there. And it's pick city for him. So, gotta force Kyler's hand a little bit. You can't play afraid of his mobility, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. And, that's where you got to go. Well, you don't want to over contain because you do want to rush him. And that's why I stumbled over what I was saying a little bit because it's like, well, I don't want to make it sound like I do want to do nothing but contain because we know contain's not going to do everything. So this is where you wish you had a better, and I know this is going to sound nuts because no team really has it, but this is where you wish you had a better fourth linebacker because then I would do a 3-4 front with him and have your four speed linebackers out there where you could rush, let's say, okay, we're going to rush Edge and Quay and we're going to drop McDuffie and and whoever your fourth one would be. So, or we're gonna drop Edge and rush Quay and McDuffie, but I don't know if I fully trust Eric Wilson as the fourth. Even he, don't get me wrong, he's made some plays, but I don't know if I fully trust him as the fourth out there when, yeah. But you definitely hope Jair's back. I gotta look at. Let's see, what do they got at receiver? I know they've got Marvin Harrison.
Michael Wilson, the one out
Really?
of Stanford, he's been a solid pro, but still struggling with injuries. McBride, the tight end, has been really their third receiver, and then they have Dortch, who's your like stereotypical white slot receiver, if I'm remembering the right Greg Dortch. So, and then Zach Pascal, I'm pretty sure he's the one. He was with the Colts for the longest time. Solid possession receiver type. So
Yeah, but he must not have any, because I don't see him in the stats here. I see Dortch, I see McBride, Wilson, Harrison, Higgins, and Raymond. So is Pascal on the practice squad then?
I think he might just be like their fifth receiver kind of thing.
Huh.
So yeah.
Uh. So yeah, I guess this could be a week you would say, okay, we'll just sit Jair another week if he's not fully ready, because it doesn't look like they've got much that scares me, even though Kyler is spreading the ball around pretty
Yeah,
good.
it's really predicated on how much you're able to affect and contain Kyler, and how much you have to dedicate resources to Marvin Harrison Jr. that it potentially opens up other guys on that team. So that's where, like I said, it would help to have Jair because, like I said, I don't know if I would necessarily match Jair on Harrison. I'm sure they would like to try it, but also, partly because Jair is a little compromised injury wise, and also because partly because it's like a bad, just height matchup. You just want Jair to take whoever he's covering and just take him out of the game. And maybe this is a week where you use, how Belichick used to do this, where especially the years where he had Revis and kind of when he had Stephon Gilmore, is he would put Revis or Gilmore on actually the second wide receiver because he's like, I know he can cover this guy without help and just take him out of the game for all intents and purposes. And then I'm going to just send help. I'm going to put still a good cover player on the other guy, but we're going to shade and send help and stuff like that. I and Hafley has done this kind of thing, especially like his Boston College defense because it's Boston College. You only have so much resources in terms of the level, the caliber of player you have. So he's used to sending help, shading help, things like that. So I'm really curious to see what he does. And I don't know if it would go to the extreme as you were pointing out, but Arizona is it's still an still an NFC opponent, but it's a relatively uncommon NFC opponent because not in our division. We don't generally end up in the same place in the division rankings, so we don't play each other when we don't play the NFC West that much. So, and because of the kind of offense they have, I wouldn't be surprised if they do throw some screwballs at the Cardinals offense just to try and keep Murray off kilter and off out of rhythm. So I'm hoping to see some curveballs, and like you said, main thing is that I want to just see this pass rush get some wins. And yeah, they're not going to come screaming off the edge or anything like that, but you want to see them defeat some blocks and get in the backfield a little more than they've been getting there. So that's the key on that side of the ball. And then the other side of it is the way you take their running game away is you score when you have the ball on offense. And there's been a lot of, articles about how a little tongue in cheek how this year's offense is mimicking last year's offense, where there's been the big plays, but they've been inconsistent moving the chains on a drive to drive basis in between. Last week's game kind of bore that out a little bit too, where the 3 touchdown drives are all on the back of big plays. You have the 53-yard fuck it, Jaden is down there somewhere, the 66-yard touchdown to Tucker. And then the second Tucker drive, it had a couple, it wasn't as reliant on like a 50-plus yard play, but there were some like 15 to 20-yard gains in there that kind of helped chunk play down the field. And then, Tucker scores on the tight end screen. So you want to see them be more productive and proficient on a drive to drive basis. But if they can put up, an early 14, like get up 14-3 or something like that, then you force Arizona's hand. And so this is one of those offense is your best defense kind of weeks, in my opinion.
For sure, and I'm just going over through some stuff. It looks like they're really struggling in the turnover department.
Yeah, so
They're not really creating a lot of I mean, they're losing a lot of fumbles. It looks like Kyler's got 2, and then there's 5 other guys that have a single fumble.
well, and then
I know Kyler's only got the 2 interceptions.
and as much as I said that the Cardinals offense was very like middle of the pack or slightly above average in some regards, their defense sucks. They're they're ranked in the bottom third in every bottom fourth in most things, actually, I should say. So the only thing that the only 2 points where they're getting relatively average ratings is in opponent fourth down conversion percentage and opponent red zone touchdown percentage, which they rank 14th and 18th respectively. Otherwise, if you go and look at like their team rankings of their like points per game, opponent yards per game, you're seeing a lot of 27, 25, 20. They're allowing 4.6 yards per rush. They're allowing the 28th most rush yards per game. They're ranked 30th in. So they're allowing opponents to complete just under 72.5% of their passes, which is an insane percentage to be giving up in the NFL. So this is a week where, and to me, that speaks that this is a defense that's like, okay, we're going to give you the underneath stuff, and we'll see if you can drive the field. And to be, it's a good thing for LaFleur because it's like you want to see Love read the plays out, be efficient, and take care of the ball, moving it down the field and stuff. So good in that regard, but also don't neglect Jacobs and Wilson this week. Like we should not go into the half with fewer than 20 rushes this week because you should be able to beat up this Cardinals defense.
Right, but what I was mainly pointing at is it looks like they're struggling with the offensive turnover side. So they're losing a lot of fumbles. Kyler, yeah, he's not getting intercepted as much, but it looks like they're really hanging on the ball. It looks, as much as we've been complaining about Packers drops, it looks like they're having just as much issues there. McBride's at 50%, Wilson's at 61, Harrison's at 45. Higgins, with the little bit that he's got, he's at 87.5. Dortch is at 45.5. And Raymond has one reception on one target. So I don't think he can really be thrown in there. But like I said, with as hard of time as the Packers seem to have with the drops on their offense, the Cardinals are having just as difficult of a time. And that's where you've got to forget about zone, man to man, and hit Kyler. Because it looks like these guys are going to be struggling anyway. That's what I was looking at on. I know we need to start talking about defense, but that's where I was looking at more on for the turnover rate. It looks like they're willing to give up the ball, so we just got to take advantage of those opportunities. You're muted, Mike. You're muted.
So, and that dovetails into what I was talking about their defense, where they don't take the ball away very much. McKinney, I know he's outpacing a lot of teams, but he is outpacing the Cardinals in interceptions. They only have 4 so far on the season as a defense, and they have 11 sacks. So like just slightly over 2 a game at this point. So not a lot of pressure, and like I said, their percentage of passes that they're allowing, it really does make me think that what's happening there is they're playing like a Barry style of defense where it's a lot of like, let them catch it, we'll come up, rally to the ball kind of thing and stuff. So just as it is every week, but especially like you're saying where the Cardinals will give it up some and they don't force a lot of them on their end. So don't give them any free handouts. Take care of the football, end every drive in a kick. And the big thing, like I said, I had issue with how LaFleur seemed to be trying to force feed Love passes to get him in a rhythm. I think this week you still want to see him get him in a rhythm, but at the same time, roll into this defense because they do not stop the run well either, and create some open looks by just blitzing them on the ground and then running hard play action at them afterwards. So I think LaFleur can kind of get in his bag on this one. But also, I think that our O line should be able to take it to this Cardinals defense for the most part.
Well, and it doesn't look like their defense is very good at defending the pass
No,
either.
they're not.
Now, you might have seen the stats, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Out of the 4 interceptions that they have as a team, how many of them are by a defensive back?
I know one of them isn't because I know what's it called. I know Kazir White was the one who ended the 49ers game with an interception, so I know that's one. I'm gonna guess it's one or two are only by DBs.
Only one. One's by Gardick, who's an outside linebacker. One's by Mac Wilson, linebacker. The other one is Kaiser White, one, and then Garrett Williams has one. So as long as you can avoid their linebackers, I think you'll be pretty good passing it around.
It's just one of those
um,
weeks.
but yeah, I mean, feed. I think, and I go back to last week's game. I think it was more just to build Jordan's
Yeah, yeah,
confidence
yeah.
up, get him built back into it. So I think now they can start going back into a normal game plan and say, all right, these guys are probably just as bad, if not worse, than what the Colts are against the rush. We'll feed Jacobs, we'll feed Wilson. Do they have a third one on the
Brooks is
roster
still on
right
the
now?
roster right
Yeah,
now.
Martin. Brooks, that's it. I don't know why I keep wanting to call him Martin. Yeah, so feed those 3 guys, spread it around. Maybe this is the week Josh Jacobs gets his first touchdown receiving.
Still a wild stat. It's absolutely wild. And for those wondering,
And he hates it.
Marshawn Lloyd cannot practice till next week.
Yeah, because he went on
Right before week
week
3.
1.
Yeah.
Oh, right before week. Yeah. But I'm wondering about Ford. Do you think he gets brought in or not?
I don't think so. Hard to say though, just because everyone else is relatively healthy. Hold on. Kenny
Well,
is
don't they
still.
have a spot because
They did.
don't they have an
They
extra spot open because they released
Rochelle, but
Rochelle?
you assume because I don't think Dobbs is technically back on the roster yet, so you assume that that's earmarked for Dobbs, unless things aren't hunky dory and you bring Ford into that spot, kind of thing. But yeah, I would assume that the vacancy from Rochelle's release is going to be for Dobbs when he does come back.
I was thinking something different. I thought they already had Rochelle on the roster before they did the suspension of Dobbs, so I could be wrong. Like we said at the beginning, we're all out of it right now. So right now the kid's fallen asleep. So she lost she, she lost our bet on who was going to fall asleep
That
first.
just means that Jacob and I
So
can doze off now without any sort of repercussions. But yeah, not that we're belittling the Cardinals or taking them lightly, but this is a game that
no.
it should be a good matchup for the Packers. It's good that it is it's a home game. Hold on, one thing I do want to check on the Cardinals is so
And while you're looking that up, the weather is not supposed to be great either. It's supposed to be in low 50s and like 83% chance of rain. I was just looking at it. So conditions aren't going to be great either.
yeah, so even more so take care of the football, pound the ground game. Yeah, and so that's the thing is so this is their technically their second true road game of the season, but their first true road game. Granted, it was against the Bills, but that was week 1, and you can do a little bit more free pre-game travel arrangements in week 1 because especially under the new preseason rules where there's only 3 games, you have 2 weeks off, so you can go up a week early and get rid of jet lag and all that kind of stuff. This week, not only are they flying, not cross country, but you're flying 3 time zones or 2 time zones over, but you also came off playing the Niners, and those two teams just beat the crap out of each other for the full 60 minutes. And we see it a lot against certain teams where you see the physical toll those games take on them the next week. So, like I said, it's already not a great matchup for the Cardinals looking at the Packers, and you add in the travel, you add in the physical toll that their game last week likely took on them, and it bears out a little bit in the injury report. So, like I said, I know Green Bay's was long, but Kelvin Beachum, their starting right tackle, didn't participate. Their starting right guard, Evan Brown, didn't participate today. Zay, what's it called? And then Garrett Williams, the one cornerback who has an interception, he didn't, or he was a limited participant. Darius Robinson was a limited participant. And then one more thing to watch is their kicking situation. So Chad Ryland was kicking for them last week because Matt Prater, the longtime former Bronco and Lion, he's been injured with a left knee injury. He practiced today, but it's his plant knee, and you don't like. You just got to be certain that
You don't mess with
yeah,
it.
you don't want to mess with that because if he plants wrong and stuff, yeah, that could be potentially catastrophic. So we'll see what they do with that, but it should be a good matchup for the Packers. But speaking of that, Joe, let's start to put a bow on this one. Your over unders, which totally were prepared ahead of time. What you got for over unders this week?
Well, I got to stick with the one.
No,
I got to do
not
it because
happening.
it's been.
I'm sticking with mine. No go.
So obviously, over under half an interception for McKinney. I'm gonna stay with it. I really think that, especially
The fact that he almost got two last week, like he legitimately could have had two. Like he had the second one go through his hands, and really there was a chance he could have had a third earlier in the game. So yeah, like he is just playing on a different level right now.
although that does scare me a little bit because he almost had a second one. Technically, he shouldn't have had his one. So it makes me worried about this week with it. But like I said, I think with weather conditions, I think if the Packers can contain a little bit better, get some rush on him, Kyler's going to make mistakes, and maybe we see a repeat of 2021, and instead of Razul, it's McKinney making the interception to seal the deal. So yeah, I'm gonna go basically over under half interception for McKinney. I'm going over for it. Let's go with Jordan. Uh, uh, See if he's a little bit better off now. So we'll go. He had 224 in the last game. Let's say we'll start there, over under 224 and a half.
I'm gonna say under. I think he's gonna end up in like the 200 and teens, just because I think the run game is gonna really just chew up the clock and just grind out not even grind out yards. I think they're gonna road grade the Cardinals a little bit, and Love is gonna have one of those where it might be one of those games where he ends up with like 3 or 4 touchdowns, but he only throws it like 20 times, so he doesn't end up with that much over 200 yards. I get the feeling it's one of those kind of games.
I'm going to say slightly over. I think he's going to hit the 250
Okay.
mark. And I think the reason is because of all the quote unquote drama going on with Romeo. You're going to see him try to get it to Romeo a little bit more. Or you're going to see, and if Christian plays, maybe you see a couple of deep ones.
Well, and that's the thing is if Watson is able to, if he's healthy enough to be a consistent decoy, even that opens up so much for Reed, Tucker. Like that's the thing with last week's game is Reed and Tucker had two really good games. Individually had good games against the Rams, and that's with Bo Melton being the one getting. And this is not a shot at Melton, but Melton is 5'11" if we're being generous. Whereas Watson, it's like not only is he as fast, but he's 6 inches taller as well. So it's just a different package that's coming at you. So yeah, if Watson is healthy and if Dobbs is there to be that just consistent perimeter presence, it does open up their passing game. But then also that helps open up their run game too. So that's kind of where I'm going slightly on the under there.
Let's do we'll try this one because it hasn't been as good luck as I had hoped, but we'll try it anyway. Over under 2.5 sacks for the Packers
I think
defense.
under, as much as Hafley has been more aggressive, and especially as effective as Quay and Cooper have been on those inside A gap, or Quay on the inside A gap blitzes, Cooper on those stunts from the second level. I just think that, not that Hafley's going to be too passive, but I think the style of play is going to dictate that they're not as into Kyler as they want, as we'd want them to be. But I do think they're going to force him into a few turnovers.
I'm going to go over, but I think it's at 3 exact. Because I think 2 of them are Kyler's going to roll out and get hit behind the line as he's trying to take one of his deep shots. And I think you're going to get at least 2 of them, and then I think you're going to get one traditional sack where it's just right up the middle or right off the edge, and he doesn't see it coming and just gets hit, gets
Yeah.
planted. Now, this one's not an over-under. We'll call it a yes/no. Yes or no, do we see Max versus Bo? And so I can say this to the listeners, this is what I mean. Obviously, Max Melton was drafted by the Cardinals, and we have Bo Melton on the Packers. Brothers, everybody wanted Max on Green Bay. It didn't happen. So, do we see Max Melton versus Bo Melton?
I think
Yes or
yes,
no?
because Melton is not one of their top 3 corners. According to the depth chart, he is, I don't even know how to determine if he's their 4th or 5th cornerback, but he is not, the starter or the nickel. So if I'm assuming Watson is healthy, Dobbs is back, so Melton kind of goes back to the background a little bit and is your 4th, 5th wide receiver, depending on what they're trying to do and stuff. But if that's the case, then he will be seeing like a deep sub package cornerback, and that opens the door for Melton on Melton party on the field of play this weekend in Lambeau. So it would be fun. I think it would be fun to see it.
I'm going to say yes with it too, because if the one CB that we were just talking about is not a go, then
Yeah.
obviously, that bumps the depth chart up. So Max is going to have to get out there to play. I'm still not sold that Christian's going to play this week. I know he did his whole player speak on, well, I'm doing everything in my power to get there on
The one reason
but
I'm a
I
little
think
more
you'll
optimistic too is he did say the whole like it's very much like the stuff about Jordan, where it's like he was a lot closer than we expected him to be last week. They're doing that speak, and you can read into that, you can believe that however much you want to and stuff. But I do think there is some decent kernel of truth to that statement. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be tight. I think it will be at minimum a true game time decision for Watson.
Well, I think they'll be a little bit more conservative with him than they were with Jordan just because of the history that Christian has and not to rush him out there and get him re-injured in a heartbeat, even though he's, like he said, he's taken better precautions with the stuff that he did over the offseason and all that. But I'm
Yeah.
about
And
50-50
as
on
much
it.
as this isn't a soft tissue injury, ankle, like rolled ankles can lead to soft tissue injury because of the overcompensation factors. So, yeah, not wrong there.
That's it. That's all.
All right. Well, in that case, we are going to sign off before we start getting extra loopy on this one. uh, please check out our website, ohanapackers.org. Blog posts are going up, streams of the episodes are on there, and merch. Support our troop, our honor the troops. Like you said, I'm trying to avoid being canceled by saying the exact phrase, and our cancer awareness initiatives. Please, and obviously support the channel as well. Please be following the channel on Twitter at Ohana_Packers. Oh shoot, I forgot to look it up. Please follow us also on Facebook and Instagram, as we're trying to get our activity up on those sites as well. Just search Ohana Packers. I can't remember the screen name exactly for those two. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting app to get a like and a subscribe, and give us all of your feedback. We want to produce the content you're looking for. The Packers look to get 2 games above 500 this week with another and score their second conference win of the season. Also, a little bit more subtext on this. Exercise the demons of the late McCarthy and early LaFleur era to stop losing games to AFC or NFC West teams. For the love of God. But, and we've beaten the one that we.
That was the last game McCarthy coached, wasn't it? Against
The
the
bad
Cardinals at
Cardinals,
Lambeau.
too. Yep. So, and the funny thing is, we beat an NFC West team last week, but the Rams were always the one that we would beat over the years. So to some degree, it kind of doesn't count. It still counts, but the Cardinals is one of them, the 2015 playoff game and a couple others. And then obviously the 49ers later on in the season. But keep it here. Joe will be doing a post-game show, and we'll have our recap and thoughts on the game afterwards and do our review show. That's going to do it for us. Go Pack Go, and aloha.